Thank you so much, Dr. Cristi Castillo-Catoni, for coming on Wellness Your Way. I'm thrilled to have you here.
Thank you, Megan, for the invitation. I'm really excited to have some fun during our talk today.
Of course, I know we will, and I know everyone listening will have fun as well. To start us off, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I live in Washington, D.C., live and work in Washington, D.C. I'm an internal medicine board certified. At the end of the day, primary care is what I do. So I see folks from close to 18 years old all the way up until we can be on this planet. And I very much love that. I live with my husband, my daughter, and our dog. And I am originally from San Juan, Puerto Rico, so I am kind of Latina, so to speak. And my big passions in medicine are, as so many of us, but preventive care. And I have a particular interest in nutrition. I'm in no ways a certified nutritionist, but it's something I try to learn about every day. And so that's a little
Well,
bit about me.
thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so excited to have a nutrition focused MD on the podcast. In fact, when your team reached out to me, that was what immediately attracted me. I was like, yes, she's in. I would love to share her insights because I know you're full of so much wisdom. And then as I read more about you and got to know you virtually, I became even more excited. But I'd love to know why you think nutrition is so important to your work.
I At the end of the day, we know nutrition plays such a big role in and is really the basis for a lot of diseases. I mean,
Mm.
first comes to mind things like diabetes, obesity, which can then lead to hypertension, diabetes, and then lead from there to things like coronary artery disease and such. But so if we can tackle nutrition, and one of the things that we can tackle, and we can get people to eat healthily, so to speak, and
Mhm.
that's a big broad term, but we can prevent and we can keep health going, which health, like my colleague would describe as I think the absence of disease, right? And
Yes.
so if nutrition's one of those pillars where we can tackle it and we can prevent so many things from happening down the road and then keep people healthy at the end of the day.
Mm,
So
amazing. It's so incredible to me that nutrition is such a relatively new science. We're learning
mm,
so much every single week, every single year for sure. And even, I mean, when I was growing up, I'm only 37, but growing up, I think we had such a different paradigm around nutrition and
yeah.
chronic diseases. And it's so exciting to see our eyes opening these days, thanks to people like you in large part.
No, and then same goes for you. I think we're viewing it much more than reactive. We're in a preventive way. And
Mhm.
so a lot of my practice and what I like to do is even if you don't have, hopefully you don't have those diseases coming in, right? And we can um, keep each other on track not to get them. And so much more preventive than reactive at this point. And
Yeah.
hey, if you have it, there's so much we can do. Um,
Yes.
and so it's also that hope and that we don't if we need medication that we can hopefully come off of it down the road
Yes.
through lifestyle modification and so to me that's very exciting that a lot of people come and they're like I don't want to be on one more medication and it's apt. I can't promise that we can, but there's
Right.
definitely that option and that there's things that every single one of us can do in that way.
That's so exciting. And I think for our audience, a lot of us as a family are very nutrition focused already, more than the average person. But still, I know there are people listening who want to eat healthier. They believe in the power of nutrition. They believe that they can change their body. And it's just scary. There are a lot
Mhm.
of barriers to entry for getting healthy. I personally think a lot of that comes from people trying to be perfect and the diet industry and all of that. But I'd love to talk about some of these hesitations. One of them is giving up people's favorite foods, cultural, family foods, things like that. Can you tell me your opinion and your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I'm not big on the all or none. Like I'm 100% all the time, get the white rice out of my diet. And I'm thinking of a Latino Puerto Rican diet, like my culture, right? And but I know that's true for other cultures. And so I keep on telling folks, and I tell myself as well, it's not being perfect. It's just right making changes, and trying to not be never have rice or never have a sweet, or but just being mindful of not having those things be the staples of your diet, right? And making small changes. um and I'm sorry, so you had asked that if
I
I got
asked a very
distracted.
long and winding question, and I think you answered a big part of it perfectly. I'd love to keep going on that, and then we'll rewind
Okay.
to other hesitations. So, in the case you said rice or a sweet, rice, those are both great examples. For rice, for example, is it healthy for someone with type 2 diabetes to eat 6 cups of rice plain as a meal? I think everyone would agree no. But can we do things like go for a 10-minute walk after the meal that includes rice, or increase our fiber and our protein and our healthy fat with the rice to modify the glycemic impact of that, or only have rice, a couple times a week and have cauliflower rice or whatever? We can do so much without having that very dogmatic approach. Like you were saying, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. So
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate that thought. Are those some of the things that you would counsel your client or your patients to do? Um,
Yeah, absolutely. I tell them portions, right? So if
yes,
you love white rice and that's just something you just don't want to let go of your diet, I can understand it. It's probably not, in my opinion, probably not healthy to let it go completely, because it's not
yes.
realistic. It feels restrictive, and when we get to that point, you're just gonna kind of fall back to your old habits,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to feel bad about that. So portions, like you said, pair that with a walk to lower the impact of it. If you're already in a place where we need to be monitoring that, let's empower you with data. And so let's get you, if it's in your means, let's get you something so you can monitor what
Yes,
that portion does to you, right? And so like a continuous glucose monitor, and let's find ways about that so that you can still incorporate the foods that you like. And like you said, maybe for me, for example, we make rice in different ways, and so I substitute with cauliflower rice, and it doesn't, I'm not going to say it doesn't taste the same. It's not the same, but I still get the flavors of the other things I use to make my rice usually. And so I get used to it. And then, hey, every so often I do have my rice, and I do watch my portions with it. And then, so I think it's finding a middle ground and not feeling like you have to let go of the things you love. It's making modifications.
yes. I love that so much. Thank you for elaborating on that. Let's go into a couple other hesitations because I blanketed them at the beginning. Budget is another very
Yeah.
valid hesitation, and frankly it's scary going into Whole Foods or someplace like that, and you see all these powders and these things that cost $85, and you think, oh, I could never eat healthy,
Mhm.
and you go back to McDonald's. And I can understand the journey, the plight of someone in that situation, but I don't think it has to be this way. Can you tell us more about budget and healthy eating?
Yeah, I have hesitations about all these supplements. I do. I mean, I think, and you might feel differently, but I feel like we can still eat healthily without having to spend minimum of $100 on supplements. I mean, we can get
Agreed.
a lot of those nutrients through foods.
Yes.
And yes, Whole Foods, even if you don't buy the powders, it's expensive. It's hard to spend less
Yes.
than $100 and just buying a couple things in Whole Foods. So I've noticed kind of at my local global market, it tends to be much less expensive, and they seem to have great produce. So that's kind of an option. Also, frozen veggies.
Yes.
They do still, keep a lot of their nutrients. I don't know if you agree, but that's always
I
an
do.
option, and they're cheaper.
Yes.
And unless you're known to, for whatever reason, have a deficiency in a certain vitamin or nutrient, then let's try to get them through your foods.
Yes.
And let's find ways to, again, if you can't buy the fresh fruits and veggies at Whole Foods, then go and buy them frozen at your
Yes.
whatever, right, supermarket you have, and then check even the sales section for those foods, and then get what's seasonally available. Whatever is seasonally available tends to be cheaper.
Yes.
um, and so those are a few things I tell folks. I usually don't tell folks go ahead and stock up on all the powders in Whole Foods, because yeah, um, that's how I feel about
I agree completely. I think frozen veggies are underrated and fruits
Mhm.
as well, like
Yeah.
berries for smoothie.
Yep.
Berries can be very expensive, especially if
Yep.
they're not seasonal. And I love
Hmm.
putting like a handful of blueberries in a smoothie. But in a smoothie, frozen are just as healthy and just as tasty as
Yep.
fresh, and a lot less expensive. So agree on that. I think what you said without even maybe realizing it is you were saying buy the whole food, buy the fruits and vegetables and all these whole foods. And that, in my opinion, is the answer. When we're buying whole food, like the Whole Foods brand, snacks and bars and
Mm-hmm.
powders and all of that, that's expensive. But
Hmm.
when we're going to our local market, like you said, and we're getting fresh, seasonal, whole foods like actual fruits, vegetables, other real foods and not packaged and processed foods, that saves a lot more money than most people realize.
It does, absolutely. And then just keeping, it's a cliche, but eat the rainbow. Eat as
Yes.
many colors as you can from what the earth gives us, right? And that's
Yes.
probably giving you a different vitamin, a different mineral.
Yes.
Um, and then it comes from the earth. So right, there's not much preservatives in there.
Yes.
So that's the other good part of it.
Amazing. Okay, so cultural and family foods and then budget. We talked about those barriers. Are there any other barriers that you frequently encounter with your patients to healthy eating?
Yeah, so my practice is in Washington, D.C. So typically busy, a lot of quote unquote type A people, that kind
Yes.
of go-getters, so to speak. So schedules get in the way. Right? People wake up at sometimes 5 o'clock and you're up and going and you may not get home until, who knows, 7 o'clock, and then you're back and doing some work. And of course there's family. So I tend to see a fair amount of folks that are in their 40s or late 30s to 50s. And so that's the time when we still have kids, or and so there's people are running around taking their kids places, and that's another challenge. So how do I eat well,
Mm-hmm.
and then keep up with my schedule? So that's a barrier. Um, the other thing is people many times think that eating healthy isn't delicious or isn't fun and is boring. And so that's kind of another hurdle, I think, in a lot of my patients' minds. And for me, I don't think I view it that way, because I view cooking and preparing meals as fun, and I view it
Yes.
as an activity that could really be bonding for a family. And that's how I try to keep it at home. But I realize some people just don't like being in the kitchen. And so for me as a physician, it's keeping that open mind that not everybody's going to love being in the kitchen like me. And so how do we make it so that you can eat better?
Yes. Yeah. In a fun way that fits your lifestyle. Because
Exactly.
part of me, having been in the corporate world before, part of me is like trying to find those hacks. Okay, well, you can drink a smoothie while you're on a Zoom call and all of this stuff, and that's lunch. And then you can order in meal delivery and all this stuff. And then the other part of me is like, the US is the culture that spends the least time and money as a percent of our overall budget on food. And maybe we're missing the point a little bit.
Mhm.
Maybe actually making time for just a 10-minute lunch, even in the context of your busy day, maybe that is a necessity or a very helpful thing. And I'm always torn between those two. I think for everyone the answer is slightly different, but I
Mhm.
love your point on making it work for whatever your lifestyle is and keeping an open mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And then hopefully, where we can, introducing a little, I guess the word is mindfulness about the eating process and the cooking
Yes.
process, even if, and I'm guilty of that. I sometimes running through my day and I just like grab my lunch that I brought in. You'll see me writing typing a note while I'm eating something. But
Yes.
it's, I mean, even taking even 5 minutes to think about being present and with your meal, right? And okay,
Yes.
what am I getting in? Let me just take a little time to digest. It's easier said than done, but I think just thinking about it helps, and
Yes.
it's something that can be worked on. If you have an awareness of it, you can work on it.
I agree. That's amazing. All right, let's say we get through some of these barriers. Now we're ready to eat healthily. We talked a little bit about not necessarily just diving in and having this all or nothing mentality, but I've read about you that you have 4 factors to consider when formulating what you call the right healthy eating plan for you and your family. Can you talk to us about these 4 factors?
Yeah, so I think they're in my mind kind of simple and basic, but I think it's time. So look at what's your time and availability for prep and all that. What does that look like? What does your we've kind of talked about it. What is your cultural backgrounds, your family's preferences? What's your budget? We kind of talked about that as well. Um, and then the last one is, and you know, think about what your goals are, kind
Yes.
of for nutrition as a family, if that makes sense. And then start with that, and maybe don't tackle all of them at once. Maybe,
Yeah.
sit down and think, okay, so where could I fit in? I do really think thinking about it and prepping helps a lot. So if you pick a day of the week where you sit back and say, okay, what do I want my what do I want my to frame my week to be in terms of what I eat? And for a lot of us, it just helps if you're very structured to almost make a menu. It sounds boring, but you can really switch around. What you plan for Monday can go on Wednesday.
Yes.
And almost like starting with a menu. And that sets you up for success because from there goes your shopping list. And you can
Yes.
even control your budget a little bit through there. So you're not going and just grabbing whatever you see. So start with that. Start thinking about, okay, what day of the week works well for me or for us to sit down as a family and just take 30 minutes, 25, 30 minutes and think about this. And that tackles the time part of it. And maybe practice that for a few weeks. And then you can incorporate in there, and then you'll see how that goes. And then you can really sit down as a family and say, okay, what things are we willing to change about our diet? So if it's
Yes.
the rice, are we willing to try cauliflower rice or broccoli rice this week? And so, and again, you can see how this can actually bring people together. It can be a big source of heated arguments as well. But I really view it as something that can also bring us together. Um,
I really love that idea of sitting down as a family and just dedicating some time. Time is precious, we know that, but some time planning and potentially even prepping for some people, it saves time. That's
yeah,
I love saving time, and that's why I plan. Because
yeah,
if I had to think every single meal, 21 meals a week, what should I eat now? Like, what do I have? Should I go out? Should I whatever? That's a lot of time that I don't want to have to spend every single
yeah.
meal. So having that menu, I call it a mix and match meal plan. You said if
Yep.
if you plan it Monday, it can go Wednesday, whatever, but it saves time. It certainly saves me stress. It definitely saves me wasted food because
Mm-hmm.
I don't buy extra stuff. And I think it saves some health sacrifices as well. So I love that idea.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're not. I think for most people, it's if money is, if budget is important, it also saves you money because you're not
Yes.
kind of scrambling going out to grab lunch at the end of the
Yes.
day. You for a lot of families, it ends up working out where you make one big dinner meal and then you save some for lunch the
Yes.
next day, or you make some basic things and you're able to mix them up during the week. So that's something too, I think that people, if they can, they should try.
I love it. And in terms of your focus on cultural foods, I was just thinking as you were speaking, this is a great place for social media because, for better or for worse, you can find almost anything on social media. And if your culture is, I don't know, your family is from Thailand, or your family is Greek, or your family is whatever your cultural background is, you can Google healthy Greek food, maybe paleo Thai food. I don't ascribe to any particular diet, paleo or otherwise, but sometimes that as a Google search term is very helpful to
Mm-hmm.
identify some recipes that might align with your culture that would be more in line with your nutritional goals as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I can envision, I've never done it, but I can envision, somebody loves having naan or a paratha, then they might, Google, yeah, healthy ways to make a naan or to make, parathas and options to or alternatives to. Um, Absolutely. I think that, the internet can be a rabbit hole, but it can also kind of really open up to so many in a good way. And so I think let's use it to our advantage.
Yes.
And then also reach out. Many of us, not all of us, but we many times, create links in our community to our people that are in our same culture. And so many times just exchanging ideas, you might learn of somebody that's already doing something a little different. Or
Yes.
so again, the idea of bringing community into nutrition, I think is really interesting.
Absolutely agree. That's wonderful. Okay, so I would like to spend the whole time on nutrition, but there are other factors that are super important. And since you have a very holistic, expansive approach, I'd love to cover some of these other factors. There's stress, there's sleep, there's movement. You mentioned mindfulness. How do you think all of these factors are intertwined, or how do they all impact our health?
Yeah. So if we're not, they really do directly impact each other. If we're not sleeping well, uh, our energy is low. A lot of us are more prone to just grab whatever we find just because
Mhm.
we're kind of feeling crummy. If we're not moving kind of in the same way, for a lot of people, it's interesting. You probably see this in your practice. For a lot of people, it's if I eat well, I exercise, and if
Mhm.
I exercise, I eat well. And so if you're not moving much, number one, that might affect your eating well. But number two, the way your body metabolizes things changes, and so there's an impact there as well. um, I don't know if you mentioned mood in there too, but I also think they're very related. It
Yes.
kind of, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? If my mood is not well, does that lead to me not eating well, or vice versa?
Mhm.
But absolutely, I mean, the types of foods you eat um, can impact your mood significantly and your energy levels. And if you're not feeling energetic and your mood's not doing well, you're not going to move much. And so you can start seeing how one thing directly impacts the other. And so I
Yes.
think that's why it's important to not overly focus on one thing and really
Yes.
try to tweak everything a little bit at a time, because they all are related.
Those are such great points. I have two follow-up questions and comments for you. The first is a maybe fault of mine looking backwards and dealing with clients. I like to try to give them a couple of action steps each time. And I'll always start with nutrition. And I've had so many clients be like, no, I want to exercise this week too. And I'm like, no, make it simple on yourself. Just focus on getting vegetables. And they have to really tell me, like, when I exercise, I eat healthier.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to make it more simple for them. Of course, I recognize the benefits of exercise for mood and for stress and heart health and you name it, but I was trying to overly simplify it. And just like you said, it goes hand in hand. So if they want to exercise, I got to encourage them to get out there and move.
Hmm. And for some people, it just works that way. Like their brains are wired that way. I've noticed it's either it's all or none for them, and I think that's part of the rewiring process. Like that's
Yeah.
probably what has you in the cycle of falling back. But it for a lot of people, it really helps just to move at the same time.
Yes.
And along those lines, you may feel the same. I just told a patient today, he's like, no, I'm not exercising at all. I just don't have the time. I really don't. Like I wake up at 5 and I'm 10 my tongue's out and I still have things to do. So I'm like, can you find 10 minutes? 10
Yes.
minutes kind of in your lunch break. Can you find 10 minutes to preferably just go outside if it's a decent day,
Yes.
and just go for a walk? If you can't, just take the stairs at your office.
Mm-hmm.
You add that, multiply that times 5, that's almost an hour of moving a day, a week. And so it's little changes. It's trying to step back from the I have to go to the gym every day. Let me join this gym membership. It's more money. And then we kind of get ourselves in that cycle. Keep it simple. I mean, if you even if you don't live in a walkable community, that we've heard it 50 times. Park a little farther, take the
Yes.
stairs where you can. Find something that feels even this little bit kind of motivating or interesting to you, and then do that.
Yes.
If it's turning on music and being silly with your kids, do that. If it's enjoying an evening walk, do that. If you love the
Absolutely.
gym and you have the means, go to the gym. Do what feels good to your body, but
Yes.
move.
Absolutely. I've even done things like a client will say, well, I have 15 Zoom calls today. I'll say, can you do 10 squats between each Zoom call? You can do that when you're signing off and signing back on. And they'll come back and be like, oh my gosh, I was sore. That
Yeah,
little bit of movement, which can be
yeah,
done in just a few seconds, is so much better than nothing. So I love
yeah.
your suggestions too. Thank you for that. And then the other thing that you said going backwards was the mood and the motivation to eat healthily. Is it the chicken or the egg? We don't know. This is such an interesting field. Speaking of nutrition as a growing science, goodness, gut health, we're learning so much more and
Mhm.
more about it. And we hear that statistic, 80% of the serotonin in our body is in our gut. That, I don't know if that's exactly correct, but it's maybe
It's out
directional.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some things that you think nutrition wise can support our mood and our mental health?
Yeah, so I think the glycemic index, keeping an eye on high glycemic index foods, because that, I think many of us will look back and say, yeah, I really crashed after I had,
Yep.
that batch of cookies or I had. And so, keeping an eye on that. And if you do know, like you said before, that you're going to have something that's very, right, rich in simple carbohydrates, then pair it with some movement, with some activity to kind of help lower the impacts. Uh, we're not even talking about alcohol, but I do have to bring it in because a lot of people will, have a couple of glasses of wine or their drink of choice, and in the evening, and that it might feel good and relaxing after a busy day, but that really does can crash your energy levels, affect your sleep, and so they really are directly related.
I love this. Do you have any words of wisdom for those things like alcohol that, like you said, it does feel good in the moment, or the cookie, it does feel good in the moment? How do we get ourselves to focus on the long term rather than that instant gratification?
Yeah, I like to every once in a while step back and do this envisioning where I want to be in. And of course, we're not going to do that at any time you have a cookie, but I think periodically it's good to think about, where do I want to be in 10 years? Where do I want to be health-wise in 15 years? Do I want to, be able to, once I'm retired, travel the world and be able to, hike? Or what are the things that maybe I can't do right now, but I know I might have the chance to do it in the future. And if I don't stay well and healthy and active, then I won't be able to do them. To me, I find that just personally very motivating. And also just knowing when I don't eat well, when I don't find movement, just how I just don't feel well. I don't feel as energetic, as motivated to do things. And so that makes me think, maybe not on the first cookie, but maybe the second, I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to regret this, even like as soon as 30 minutes, 60 minutes later.
Yes.
Um, and then maybe it's also driven me to find, because I am, at the end of the day, I love my sweets.
Yeah.
And so, what alternatives can I find that
Mm-hmm.
maybe still give me that sweet pleasure, but are healthier alternatives for me? And again, like you said, the internet is such a great thing for this. So there's so many recipes out there. But again, for what you asked, how do I pull back when I get like that? I want really bad that second glass of wine, or I want that extra cookie. I think it's really stepping back and thinking, I know I'm not going to feel great tomorrow morning,
Yeah.
or I'm not going to feel great in an hour. And I really have these things I want to do short term. And then in the long term, it's just, I really have long-term goals that to me, it's really important just to be able to move and be
Yes.
there for my daughter,
Yes.
in 20 years and in good health. And for me, I see what being on the other side of things is, and then all the
Yeah.
complications from diabetes and all that. And so I see it firsthand. And yeah, so that's how what works for me and what I try to use for my patients.
I love those. The short term, how will I feel right away, 30, 60 minutes, 24 hours after?
Mhm.
And then long term, who do I really want to be? And I'll see you out there 50 years from now, Dr. Christie. We'll be hiking some mountain somewhere beautiful and we'll
I
be
sure
both
hope so.
feeling good.
Feeling great. Yeah,
Yes.
feeling good.
It is
Yes,
a
I sure hope so.
motivation. I
Yeah,
love that long term motivation.
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your personal health habits. Are there any things that you really love doing for your health that we haven't discussed yet?
That we haven't discussed yet. So where I'm at in life right now, I have a almost 2-year-old. I not starting this practice, but continuing a practice for a prior
Yes.
doctor in DC. And so life is busy, like for so many of us. And so for me, it's nice. I commute into work via public transportation and walking. And so
Mm.
it's a 10-minute walk from my home to the metro. And so that's a nice place for the way I figured. I'm like, okay, I'm moving. And so I try to make it brisk. It also gives me space. It's my time to just kind of think about my day and kind of frame my day. And then there's another 20 minutes on metro. And so I might either like listen to a podcast. And so for me, that's my personal time. I say like
Yes.
my personal 40 minutes, the 10 minutes each way.
Yes.
Um, and so I like to start my work days that way. And my evenings are also there's some flexibility in there, but they're also very structured. I've already planned. I don't like it when I don't plan my meals. I really do practice that. It frames my week.
Yeah.
But it's basically getting home, cooking with my daughter when I can. And then when we can, we do try to go out for a walk after we have dinner, even if it's a
Wow.
short 10-minute one. Because again, it's also our bonding time as a family.
Hmm.
And for us, it doesn't have to look like anything fancy. It's a walk and it's making dinner together, but that in itself gave us probably a good hour of
Yeah.
time together that we didn't otherwise have. Nowadays, I don't really, except for the weekends, I don't get to, do the other forms of exercise that I enjoy doing. That's not where life is right now. So I try to fit things in other ways, like I said.
What an amazing example for your daughter, though, and for any parents of kids listening, that this is your normal cooking at home
Yeah.
and going for a 10-minute walk, and you walking and commuting to work. That is normal. Now she's going to grow up thinking that that's normal. And so many people don't get that gift of growing up with that role model situation.
Yeah, that's my hope that she doesn't view cooking as a strange thing. It's just
Yeah.
what we do and what feels good. Hopefully it'll feel good to her as well. And yeah, starting off those healthy habits as a foundation and hopefully, yeah. So I
Amazing.
find it's a big goal of ours at home.
Yes. Any tips for sleep? Having a 2-year-old, I'm sure you've gone through over the past couple of years some ups and downs with sleep. Any words of wisdom there?
I'm not great at it, but I think having a wind down routine, you'll hear that a
Yeah.
lot around, just kind of shutting off, of course, the electronics and um, just kind of making the lights low. We've started to do that just for all of us after a certain once we have dinner, we're back from our walk, we'll turn the lights low. We'll turn off all electronics. For some people, it helps to read a book before. For me, it helps. For others, it just gets their mind going. So it's just figuring out how you work. For some people, having some nice kind of relaxing background music. For us, with my daughter, and we've just gotten used to the white noise when she
Yes,
was little. So we now have either white noise or waves or something that feels relaxing to you, so that you can hopefully start shutting off that brain. And I don't feel great if I have alcohol late at night, so we stay away from it. I think in general, um, try to have it earlier in their day if you can.
that's amazing. I'm with you on the reading, although what I love reading is nutrition books, obviously, or personal development or business books, even. Like I like learning, and
Yeah,
I do not do well reading those before bed. So I just read fiction. I just read novels
exactly.
before bed. And sometimes my brain says, well, you should be using your time more productively. But that is productive. If it
Yep.
helps me wind down and relax and escape to some other world, I think it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Did it take you some time to get there? The being able, I find that so hard for people to do
Yes.
convincing your brain that it's okay to spend
Yes.
time, doing something you enjoy and that doesn't necessarily add to your career or,
It
checks off something on your list, but it's so important for your wellness and for who you are. Um,
a
that takes so much
thousand
time. I'm
percent.
not there yet. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you from the other side of this one, it's worth it. And it's fun. I just do Kindle Unlimited, and they keep feeding me like all these books that I call like halfway between beach reads and literature. They're not adding to my career in any way, just like you said, but they are really fun. I truly enjoy reading them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good goal for me to work on.
Okay, well, let me know. We could start a book club later.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. I could talk to you forever. I know there are so many listeners, particularly those in the DC area, but also people all around the world who would love to learn more from you. Can you tell people where they can follow you and learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am one of six health practitioners with a group called Northern Virginia Family Practice. And so a good way to learn a little bit more about me and our practice is by going to NVA as in Northern Virginia. So nvafamilypractice.com. And you'll be able to find a little bit more information about me and what we do. As a group, we really enjoy and are passionate about patient education. We do have most months we have a town hall and it's not limited to our patients and they're on different health topics, and we usually will bring in a specialist in that particular field, usually somebody in our area, but we've had now with the wonders of Zoom and such, we've had people from Massachusetts join us, and so that's, I think, a great and free.
Amazing.
That's probably the easiest way. We do have a social media presence, but it's not super strong right now. So our website, I think, is the best place to reach out to us, and LinkedIn, of course. But you'll be able to find that through our website.
That's so great. Well, I will be sure to link the website in the show notes. So anyone who is driving, certainly don't write down the URL. It'll be right down in the show notes and you can find out more. I think those town halls sound wonderful. I am definitely excited to sign up for them and learn more. And what a great service you're providing to people. That's so generous.
Thank you. They're very rewarding to us. I think there's nothing like expanding your outreach at no cost at all to people. So it's fun. Yeah, and thank you for doing that for us, for including our information for folks.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your wisdom and your insight. I appreciate you sharing everything today, Dr. Christie. It was such a pleasure to have you here.
Same here, Megan. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been fun.